conversation by commenting live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. This is the Fifth Chapter with Dennis Fithian and Brian Chapman.
The refs get the calls right, and if the Bucs keep playing
He
this
represents
soft,
the Mitt
they
by
change
way
their
of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the Mitt. Be a true EMU because Dennis in the fall and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter. That's right. Welcome to the Fifth Chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. We're ready to go for episode number 34 as we try to make sense of what's going on with the Penn State doctor. Is everybody getting myocarditis? Is nobody getting myocarditis? That was one of the wilder sports stories we've had this year, Dennis.
Well, it just continues. It's absolute chaos when it comes down to the Big Ten, man. And it all started 3 weeks ago Monday when it was revealed that there was a vote, and then everybody was twisting in the wind. They left the door cracked. It was the final vote. It wasn't going to be revisited. Now it's being revisited. There's supposed to be a revote tomorrow. Just wait a day, man. As the Big Ten turns, it's been wild.
Yeah, it has. But I think I guess the best news today is that we don't, at least as of right now, have to worry about 1/3 of Americans who have contracted the coronavirus being at risk for having myocarditis. That would be devastating, but didn't seem like there was much evidence to suggest that was the case. But definitely want to thank everybody for tuning in to episode 34 of the Fifth Chapter. Thanks to everyone who's watching on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. Also those who are listening via the podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. If you are interested in listening to the show, of course, you can do so. The podcast is available before midnight on the day of each show. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and participate in each show by sending in your feedback via Facebook Live down below, via YouTube on the side, or via Twitch. Dennis will be reading throughout the show your feedback. Let's now take a look at today's book. In the second chapter, the rich are getting richer. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers add running back Leonard Fournette. Are they now the team to beat not just in the NFC South, but in the NFC as a whole? Even more so than the Lions. In the third chapter, Heat Bucks Game 2 finished with a lot of controversy in the final 15 seconds, but it also finished with Giannis Antetokounmpo and his Bucks falling down 2-0. What to make of all that, and is he just a Pippen? In the fourth chapter, as Dennis mentioned, could the Big Ten have another vote? Even though Kevin Warren said they're not going to revisit a vote, could they revote, and how soon could it be? And in the fifth chapter, it is story time. I, of course, have another ride-sharing story. Dennis has one as well. I can tell you that as of a couple of days ago, I was going to be giving a story on a big cokehead that I was driving around, but I decided to go with a different story that took place 2 days ago. And I think that perhaps this one would top the cokehead story that, at least for right now, nobody's going to hear about. But
sounds like a good pivot to me.
Yeah. Wait, what's that supposed to mean?
You know, hey, you evaluated your story, you went with a better one. Good pivot.
All right, Dennis, let's start off with the first chapter. We'll go to the Tigers, who were above 500 for a day when they won on Tuesday against the Milwaukee Brewers. Then yesterday happened, and against a team that cannot hit, as I detailed during my major wager decision on Tuesday, against a team that can't hit, the Tigers decided to walk 10 Milwaukee Brewers and hit 2 more, and they blew a 4-0 lead and lost 8-5. They're back at 500 at 17-17, but coming into today, they're still just a game and a half behind the Blue Jays for the final playoff spot in the American League. They played 34 games. They've got 24 to 26 games left, depending on how many makeup games they do. Obviously, they have 4 games that they have not played against the Cardinals, but only 2 have been scheduled. Now, neither of us still believe that they're going to make the playoffs, but neither of us thought they'd be 17-17 at this point. And I guess you could say they have a shot if things go right. So they've had some guys step up to allow them to win 8 of their last 11. They'll need more if they're going to stay in this race. Dennis, let's play fill in the blank, and obviously we invite you guys to do the same out there when you're watching on Twitch, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Here's how we play fill in the blank. For the Tigers to stay in the playoff race, their most important pitcher must be blank, and their most important hitter must be blank. How would you fill in those blanks?
Well, I would go with Matthew Boyd at the top. And if you're going to stay in this thing, you have to have somebody. You know, he's not an ace, but he is their number one pitcher. You got to have somebody that can go out there and put up some blanks and get you some zeros and get you some innings and then break. You can't afford to have any losing streak. He's a guy also that can go a little bit deeper. Some of these guys, we know Fulmer's only going 3 innings. He's got to go a little bit deeper here and save that bullpen so you're not running out some of those guys like they did last night, and you can go there and get a 7th, 8th, and 9th inning guy. So you got to get 6 innings on him. So I would say Boyd as a pitcher. Who do you say as a pitcher?
My pitcher is going to be Casey Mize, and it's because I don't have the high expectations that you have for Matt Boyd. I mean, not that you said that you think he needs to be, I don't know, the next Mike Clevenger or something like that. But I said, last week or two, that Boyd is going to be better than he was in his first few starts, and he's not going to be a star. And if Boyd can just be that, then that's obviously part of the recipe. But I look at the rest of these pitchers, and, Turnbull, he's going to be up and down because he's wild. Fulmer, like you mentioned, he's only going 3-4 innings. Skubal could be okay down the stretch, but the key is Mize. I mean, he's got good stuff. He probably has the best stuff on the staff. The only competitor for that might be Skubal, but I think that Mize has better stuff. And Mize has not been great so far. He had the start against the White Sox where he went 7, or he struck out 7, but you look at the start against the Cubs, his infield defense really let him down, but he only went 3 1/3 in that game. He's never finished the 5th inning in any of his 3 starts. He's given up a home run in each of his 3 starts. He gave up 2 walks in each of his last 2, and he went from 7 strikeouts in his first game to 6 combined in the last 2. I think that there's more there from Mize that we could get, and I think it would be nice, obviously, to see if Mize could pitch as well as another young player who we've seen recently who has exactly 3 starts, and that's the stick figure from the Cleveland Indians, Tristan McKenzie. He's been outstanding. And, if Mize could give the Tigers that, then he could really force the Tigers into remaining in playoff contention. But if he can get close to that, if he can at least be the best pitcher on this staff, and I think there's a chance to do so, that's what it would take to keep them in the playoff race. I don't think that Boyd has that high of a ceiling, and Turnbull and Fulmer, they pretty much are where they are. But Mize, I think, with his high ceiling, if he can get them some quality starts down the stretch, that could be the key to keeping them in the playoff race.
Yeah, when it comes down to the stick, this is a tough one. Like, you just want to say Miguel
Pick
Cabrera.
the stick.
Yeah, well, you'd like to say, all right, Gibby, I want to pick Miguel Cabrera as the hot stick for today. I would like to say Cabrera. It would be great if he could get back and be a fearsome bat. You'd think, man, this is, the Hall of Famer who's like shades of Big Papi here. He's going to carry the Tigers, but I don't think it's going to be Miguel Cabrera. It's come down to me to Scope or Victor Reyes, and I'm going to pick Victor Reyes. Just if they really are going to stay in this thing and then be in the playoffs, they need him to continue to be the guy that we've seen over the last week, and that's somebody that can drive the ball, play the outfield, play center, and that's the guy that's going to be the most important to me. It's going to be Victor Reyes, who really has come out of nowhere, but now he needs to be their most important bat.
I don't think he came out of nowhere because he was hitting a lot of singles last year at the end of the 2019 year, and I thought that was I was actually pretty optimistic about him because of that, and he's doing that this year. But
he was a Rule 5 guy, wasn't he? I mean, so that's kind of coming out of nowhere.
He was, but last year was his second year with the Tigers. His first year, he played 30 games and was just on the roster to make sure that he didn't get sent back to his previous team. But that's actually an Al Avila move that's looking pretty good. A Rule 5 guy who is in your lineup every day. But you mentioned Miguel Cabrera and you didn't want to go with him. I am going to go with him because I think he is the most important hitter if the Tigers are going to stay in this race. Miggy was hitting 181 before that Indian series 2 weeks ago. Now he's hitting 240. He's 15 for 42 in that span. He's not hitting with much power because he only has 1 home run and 1 double, meaning he has 13 singles in that span. His name should be Singuel Cabrera. A few years ago, people were calling Maglio Ordonez Singlio Ordonez in his final couple of years because he had no power. Miggy is Singuel Cabrera right now. But the reason he's the most important is because while you mentioned you don't have high expectations for him to be Big Papi because he was showing all that power, or for him to be a 300, 320 hitter like he has been in the past. I don't believe that either. The reason that he's so important is because no matter how he hits, we know that Ron Gardenhire is not going to remove him from that number 3 spot in the order. Miguel, Gardenhire loves his veterans, and if you're a veteran, you can do whatever you want, and Ron Gardenhire is not going to do a thing. If Miggy wants to be the starting pitcher, if he wants to be the closer, he can do that because Gardy loves his veterans so much. But Miggy is not the best hitter on the team, but he's hitting in the number 3 spot where arguably the best hitter on the team is going to be. And when he was hitting 181, he was a black hole because guys would get on base in front of him sometimes, and then what would Miggy do? He'd strike out or he'd roll out to the third baseman. In these last 11 games, when he's 15 for 42, at least he's been hitting the singles. And when he's hitting singles, number 1, at least he's not being a rally killer. And number 2, sometimes he's driving in a run or 2. You cannot have a significant playoff push or remain in the playoffs if arguably the most important spot of your lineup is hitting 182 with a bunch of strikeouts. If Miguel Cabrera can hit 280 to 300 the rest of the year, then that will allow them to stay in contention. I think that's much more of a critical piece than Victor Reyes because I expect Reyes to continue to play as he has. And if he plays as he has, I don't think that's going to be as critical to them staying in the race.
All right, you make some strong points. Let's look. I don't know what's going on YouTube. Usually that's the spot on the live chat that everybody's blowing up, but that's not the case right now. But we do have Facebook Live. There's Stu B jumping in and said he would have picked Jacoby Jones before he got hurt, but he picked Boyd on the mound like me as the guy filling in the blank that needs to step up for the Tigers in the remaining, what do we got, 26 games?
Yep,
that's Stu.
I'll say this about Boyd. One thing that you cannot have is Matt Boyd regress to the August Boyd. If he's like that, if he's going out there with an 8.9 ERA and every single time he takes the mound, the Tigers know they have no shot, then that's it. Then they've got no shot of remaining in this race. You cannot have a black hole there when you have a shot with Matt Boyd to get yourself a number 4 or number 3 caliber start.
Yeah, the one thing, that gave them the big boost was sweeping that doubleheader and then ultimately sweeping away the Minnesota Twins, and that's what they've got tomorrow. They've got that doubleheader, and, you just start looking at it and thinking, okay, get another sweep kind of thing. Those 7-inning games, man, I know that you did not like those when we got
Correct.
And talked about it before the season. What about now?
No, they're major leaguers. They're making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And Rob Manfred is saying, hey, go out there and play 7/9 of a baseball game. You got these taxi squads so that you can go from 26 to 28 to 30 or whatever. You got your alternate site players that give you a 60-man roster. You can bring up an extra player or two. If the issue is we're worried about arms, then allow each team to bring up an extra 2 players, maybe even an extra 3 players if you got a doubleheader, and just go 9 innings. These are not little kids. When I was playing high school baseball, we played 7-inning games. When you're a high schooler, you're supposed to play less. You play 7-inning baseball games. You play 10-minute quarters in football, 10-minute quarters in basketball. Why can't they play a full game? It doesn't make any sense, especially with the added rosters. Rob Manfred should be fired, and the Mets know it too.
Because it's speeding up the game during a pandemic, and that's been the charge for this administration here. That's all they've talked about is trying to speed up these games so it attracts more of you younger folks out there.
Yeah,
the ones that are watching on Twitch, and YouTube Live. Not all of us that are looking on Facebook.
Well, that's the problem with Rob Manfred. He thinks that the number one thing he can do is to give us less baseball, make the game shorter. If you're a good commissioner, then you don't want the game to be as short as possible. You want to give people more of what they want. When it comes to regular season games, he wants to shorten them by putting a pitch clock out there. He wants to have 7-inning games, and then when you get to extra innings, let's just stick a man out there on second base to end the game as soon as possible. If you like the game, you don't want it to end. I mean, is Roger Goodell going out there and saying, hey, we got some games that are going 3 hours and 20 minutes, 3 hours and 30 minutes. We got to make this game as short as possible. You got college football games that go 3 hours and 45 minutes, 4 hours. They're not trying to make the game shorter. But obviously, he hates the game so much, he just wants to get it over with so we can go out there and play golf or something. Focus on baseball, not golf.
Football's average age is at 54, and the ratings are through the roof. So I don't think they need to look at pace of play. It's they're the king right now. It's baseball that's looking up, and their average age is 55 years old, and they're like, what's going to happen in 10 years?
Yeah, and
our
fans saying we want less baseball. If they're a fan, then they like what they see. No, I don't like the 7-inning games, Dennis.
I'm getting that feeling. You didn't like it before, but I thought maybe you sweep. If the Tigers sweep tomorrow, I think you'll come around. You'll start talking about how much you like them.
I can like the result without liking the format.
Yeah, I like it. So, what can I say? I'm all right with a 9-inning game. They've got me.
You know what?
I'm actually younger than, the average 55-year-old over there. But I like baseball, and I'm all right with a 3-hour-plus game. I'm good that way, but they're not trying to attract me. They're trying to attract my kids.
Well, perhaps they should find a way to get Mike Trout in the playoffs, because kids like Mike Trout, and he's on the worst team in the American League right now. That's a disaster. Real quickly before we turn the page, I will say that I did create a list of 3 honorable mentions for the most important Tiger if they're going to make a playoff push. Matt Boyd was not on that list, even though you and one of our feedback followers mentioned him. Number 1, well, it's not really in any order, but one of them was Tariq Skubal, basically for the same reason as Matt Boyd. They have higher ceilings than the other 3 starting pitchers. Number 2 is Joe Jimenez. He's supposed to be a critical part of that bullpen, and he has not been the same this year. He was walking guys yesterday. He's been giving up home runs this year. You can't just have him give you nothing. And then number 3, Isaac Paredes, another guy that potentially has a high ceiling that you could perhaps get more from, and he's just been kind of okay so far. He had the grand slam, had the little bloop 2-run single, but what else is he going to give you? And defensively, he's not been my favorite.
All right. You mentioned turning the page. Let's do it. Gets us to chapter 2, and it takes us to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who went out there. I don't know what the Jags are doing, but they didn't want Leonard Fournette, so they cut him. The Bucs swooped in, scooped him up, and now they've got him in the backfield. Tom Brady under center, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones the second over there, and the question becomes, are the Bucs the favorites in not just the NFC South, but in the entire NFC?
Well, they're certainly the favorites in the NFC South. I think the only other team that would be competitive with them would be the New Orleans Saints. And you look at the NFC as a whole, it's the Saints, the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, the Packers, the Vikings.
49ers?
49ers, yeah, and the Seahawks. And it's hard for me to say. I think that the Buccaneers are right there in the competition with those other teams. I don't know if they are the favorites. I could see a way for them to get the number one seed because, I mean, one thing that really helps them out is that last year they were the third best team in their division. And because of that, when you look at the two flex games, they have to play the Rams and the New York Giants. I mean, the Giants are going to be an easy win, and the Rams are a possibility for a win after their disappointing season last year. Who knows how they're going to bounce back this year. But you look at the teams that won their divisions, they have to all face one another in the 2020 season. I think that if I was going to pick right now who's going to come out of the NFC, I would probably go with probably the 49ers again. I mean, I don't trust them offensively, but defensively they have the ability to lock down. And I think that they do have more in their stable with their passing in than they showed in the playoffs last year when it was pretty much just defense and hand the ball off to Raheem Mostert and company. So I would say Tampa Bay is probably number 2. They've got a great shot to get a bye, but I would give a small edge to San Francisco, and then right behind them would be, I mean, is it Dallas? Is it Green Bay? Is it Minnesota? I don't know, but I think it's going to be a great race between the top 4, 5, 6 teams, all for that number 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, I think you're discounting the Saints. I mean, you kind of brushed them by there. I mean, the Saints have won that division the last couple of years. You think about some of the rough times that they've had in the playoffs here, but they've been at home, but they've come down to last place. Remember when they was up there, the Minnesota Miracle? That's what it took to beat them last year. They had that pass interference call by the Vikings down there. That beat them, but these are the last plays of the game. You know, the Saints, they still have Drew Brees. They're built to win. Kamara, they've signed them. They took Emmanuel Sanders away from the 49ers. They've got a Super Bowl team. That was the team that I was picking last year. I still think, you know, as much as I like to root for Tom Brady, he is 43 years old. I don't think, you know, Gronk's not going to really be a factor. If he is, it's only going to be for a couple games. I think the Bucks make the playoffs, but I don't think that that they're a serious Super Bowl contender.
Really?
I would I'd definitely put the Saints in front of them. I like the Cowboys way better. I think the Cowboys' offense is explosive, and I like their balance that they have on offense as well. And I would put the 49ers in front of them. So those 3 teams, 49ers, Saints, and Cowboys. And unfortunately for the Bucks, they play in the same division as the New Orleans Saints. And the great thing about that is we're going to be able to watch that right off the bat as those 2 teams lock horns.
Well, I agree that the Cowboys' offense can be explosive. The thing that they have to deal with is they have a new coach, and obviously they haven't had the ability in the offseason to do OTAs, mini camps, and preseason games to iron out some of the kinks, whereas while the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a new quarterback, they don't have a new coach. So we're not dealing with a whole-scale changes on both sides of the football. You obviously have a new quarterback in there, but a lot of the personnel is going to be the same, and certainly the personnel is going to be the same on the defensive side of the football. I think that Tom Brady, even though he's 45, 85, whatever the case may be, even though he's up there in age, his arm might not be as strong as it used to be, regardless of what Bruce Arians and everybody in Tampa Bay likes to say to hype him up. I still believe that he's going to have a big impact on the team this year, because last year, you look at how Tampa Bay was 3rd in the NFL in interceptions. And they were also 15th in total yards allowed defensively, but they gave up the 4th most points. And the reason is because when Jensen keeps on throwing interceptions, that gives the opposing team short fields to work with. I don't know anybody who believes that Tom Brady is not a better season than James Winston this year. He's not going to come close to interceptions. He's going to come close probably to 20 interceptions. So that's the case. If the defense is with a short field to defend all the time, then this team that was 7-9 last year, not 4-12, 7-9 last year, could really take a jump. And on top of that, you know, Tom Brady's been pretty good, not elite, pretty good the last couple of years, and he's done that with subpar weapons. Now, you know, outside of the Cowboys, this might be the best supporting cast in the league with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard. I don't know how much you can expect out of Gronk, but you look at Leonard Fournette, but they also got Ronald Jones and LaShawn. You got veterans, you got superstar talent there. I think that Brady has a chance to put up some fantasy numbers. Defense relax a little bit this year because they're not going to have to worry about going right back on the field after Jameis wins an interception.
Yeah, all good points. I think the playoffs. I just don't think they're as good as the Saints. It's done twice this year, so we'll be able to see that. I like the addition of that. I mean, Fournette's, if you're not relying on him as the offense, you're talking about banging away at the time. I mean, he can crush people. Remember that playoff game that they had against the Steelers? It's been a couple of years. The Steelers came back next. But, man, this guy's a force as a back. Not relying on the top guy, man. You're down third, fourth option, and you're talking about Fournette there for the Bucs.
I mean, yards with the Jaguars. The Jaguars have any other offensive weapon can get 1,100 yards, and everybody's focusing on him. What's he going to do? Perhaps he's two running backs, splitting reps with Jones and Sean McCoy there. He's going to be fresh all the time, and then it would make sense if you're a responsible defensive coordinator to say, all right, the first thing we have to do is shut down Mike Evans. The second thing we have to do is shut down Chris Godwin. And then the third thing we need to do is shut down O.J. Howard. You only have so many defenders out there. If Tom Brady decides to drop back and hand the ball off to Leonard Fournette as a draw, and you got the linebackers dropping back, the safeties dropping back. He's got an offensive line that added, I think they drafted a first-round pick offensive line, so this should be a pretty strong offensive line. Fournette could have the ability to put up some pretty big numbers this year. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if the Buccaneers got all the way up to the 1 seed in the NFC.
Stu says, isn't Drew Brees around the same age as TB12? He is, just a couple years younger. I think 2 years younger. So, yeah, you're talking about two guys that are north of 40 here, which is amazing. And, and a good point also there just to think about, Stu, is that Drew Brees last year, they do bang his thumb and was out for 6 games, and Teddy Bridgewater came in there.
Yeah.
I thought that freshened him up, so he was good down the stretch. I know they didn't win their playoff game, because the year before, it seemed like maybe he had lost a little bit of his arm strength. So I'm not saying that you hope that he gets injured, but there might be a shot there where their backup that they gave a boatload of money that they think could be a starter, Taysom Hill, maybe you get him in there and get him to just look for Sean Payton to, he gets a couple series anyways. I would think they'd give him a couple more, just trying to save that wear and tear on Drew Brees, trying to freshen him up, especially if they get out of the gate and have some success. Maybe in the middle of the season there, you'll see more of Taysom Hill.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what his what his role is going to be this year. It's also going to be interesting to see what the deal is with Alvin Kamara, because he's kind of holding out or causing some acrimony over a contract situation. If the Saints end up trading him, or if he ends up holding out, then all of a sudden their running game isn't nearly as explosive.
Yeah, so that was from Stu. Ryan just joined in, says you guys don't promote, but you guys want to know if we had a cash app or a way to make a contribution to the show. All that stuff's coming up there, Ryan. You can always DM me or Brian if you want to contribute to the show, get some advertising on there. If my DMs are open on Twitter, you can just go there. Facebook as well. I think everybody can just message you on Facebook, but I have that option on Twitter. I don't know if Chap does or not. Can anybody just DM you on Twitter, Chap?
I'm not sure, but hey, if there's
open that up. It's just something I just realized. Really, over the last couple months, if you look up there and you see somebody that's got the little mail thing, you can DM anybody that has that, and it's surprising how many people, even with blue check marks, allow you to DM them.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I know I have DM'd people, but I thought that you had to be following somebody to DM them or something like that.
Not if they open it up. Just look up there for that little icon. You can make it where anybody can.
Okay. And as far as accepting donations, I know I thought there was a way to do that on Twitch. I'm not sure, but hey, if there are ways that you guys want to donate to us, I have a Cash App account. So if people want to just send us big boxes of money, big Taylor Decker bags of money, then we're willing to take it. We're willing to split it 50-50. So perhaps that's something we can talk about if you guys just have all this extra money sitting around from your stimulus checks. Like, man, Why don't I give a whole bunch of it to the 5th chapter?
Let's get that bag. Yeah, let's go.
That's right. All right, let's turn the page now to the 3rd chapter. Definitely appreciate all the feedback coming in on the NFL and the Tigers. But the 3rd chapter takes us to the NBA. In the Eastern Conference, we all know that the Heat and the Bucks and the Raptors are all good teams, and the Celtics are all good teams, but we all expected that it was the Bucks conference to lose going into the bubble and going into the playoffs. We know that they lost Game 1 to the Miami Heat. That's right, the playoffs. We know they lost Game 1 to the Heat, but they also lost Game 1 to the Magic, and then they just flipped the switch, and they were good. So no big deal going into Game 2. Except that wasn't the way that it turned out, because with a 4-point deficit and 15 seconds to go in the game, the Miami Heat actually had the lead. And here is how Mike Greenberg, ran on ESPN, narrated the final 15 seconds of yesterday's game, which was controversial and also very entertaining to watch.
Defense. The Bucks playing D. They've got Jimmy Butler trapped in the corner. What's he going to do? Well, he's going to do the last thing you should. He just throws it up towards his own basket. Up goes Brook Lopez. It's a 2-point game. 8.5 to go. Now we got under 8 seconds to go. Bucks inbounding down by 3. Keep a close eye on Chris Middleton. Goran Dragic goes up straight. You tell me if that's a foul. You tell me as we show it to you again, because it is called a foul, and Middleton gets 3 free throws. We'll find out what my guys think it was a good call or bad in a moment. Middleton makes all 3. We're tied. Now, Heat inbounding. Jimmy Butler in the corner. Here comes Giannis for the help. Butler, no good, but hold everything. The hands in the air. The whistle blows. It's a foul on Giannis with no time remaining. You tell me, is that a call that you make at the end of a tie game in the playoffs? It was made. Butler goes to the line. No time left. Just needs to make 1 of 2. And here it is. Ball game. Jimmy Butler, quiet night, 13 points, but that one wins it. Giannis, 29 and 14, but not enough. The Heat up 2 games to 9.
So there you go. Big shocker in the NBA. 2 games to 1 lead for, 2 games to nothing lead for the Miami Heat over the Milwaukee Bucks. And the first thing that everybody's talking about is the controversial refereeing at the end of the game, with the foul called on the Middleton shot and then the foul called on the Jimmy Butler shot. Dennis, before we get to the potential upset in the series, what did you think about those calls?
Well, I don't know what else you want Goran Dragic to do, man. The guy's standing there. He's playing the verticality. He's got his hands straight up in the air. He's not leaning in. He's not doing anything. That's exactly how you teach it. So, that was a crime. I would say, just going back for a second there, that the Heat, they shouldn't have let it come down to that. They had a spot there in the game. They could have cruised if they just would have taken care of the ball and would have been looking at the shot clock and drained some more time out of there. They had a terrible time management there in the last 2-3 minutes. But you know what? Again, you go back, Dragic, that's exactly the way you want to teach defense. So that was a crime that happened. And you know what? Being a defensive player of the year for the Livonia Franklin Patriots back in the day, I can tell you, I used to myself jab at people in the midsection when they went up for their shot, sometimes slap them, push them, poke them, And I never got called. But years later, I was in, I don't even remember what kind of league. Obviously, there was one with some officials, because I did that, gave them the old slap in the middle. I got called for a foul. And I'm like, what are you doing? Calling me for a foul there. And you know what? A foul's a foul, except right at the end of the game in a tie game. And that's a situation you don't call a foul when you're an official. You don't want the game to be, you don't want the game to come down to you calling a little ticky-tack foul at the end of the game, even though you have 2 stars, maybe 1 superstar there, one guy that's going to transcend the game. You don't call that foul there when the game is tied. Bad job on both ends of the floor there for the officials. They got it wrong on both ends.
Yeah, they did. You're exactly right about Dragic. If you use verticality, if you put your hands up like this, you can jump up as long as you're not leaning right, left, forward, or anything like that into the shooter. You can jump up or just stand with your hands up as he did, and that's not a foul. That's exactly what he did, and the referees, the crooked referees, decided that they wanted to call it a foul anyway. And I guess because they had used their challenge, the Miami Heat had used their challenge, there was nothing they could do about this because obviously on a replay review, there's no way that would have stood, and Middleton drained all 3 free throws. And look, I'm of the belief that if it's a foul in the first 47 minutes of a game, it should be a foul in the last minute of a game. And I don't think what Giannis did should have been called a foul in any minute of the game. I mean, Jimmy Butler was almost down on the ground. He barely touched him on the side. It didn't affect the shot, obviously. It didn't affect his ability to land. If anything, it helped Jimmy Butler to land a little bit better, and the referee called that a foul. And if you are of the belief that in the final minute or the final 2 minutes of the game, you want to back away from being a referee that is in the middle of determining the outcome of the game, then you certainly don't call that a foul. It was atrocious what they did. And you know what? On top of that, there was a third missed call that nobody was talking about. I was stunned that they weren't talking about this on TNT or ESPN or whatever. But that foul or that missed call actually took place before the 2 controversial plays. If you look back at the replay, Jimmy Butler, when he jumped up and threw the ball away to Brook Lopez, he was out of bounds because he jumped up and then his foot landed out of bounds and then he threw the ball. So either the referees could have called that a travel because he jumped up and landed before letting go of the ball, or they could have called it out of bounds. They did neither. So 3 bad calls in the final 15 seconds of the game. They flat out choked. But you know who else is? No, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's one other thing that I got to add that's been going on in the NBA, and it was there again last night, and it's there when you watch these NBA games. They have to do a better job of speeding up those reviews on these out-of-bounds plays. Every time they're going to the camera, they're taking 5 minutes over there, and they're replaying it went off his finger, and then they're looking at it for 20 minutes. It just kills me. I know when it happens, I'm like, I'm going down to get a drink. I'll be back in 10 minutes. It blows the rhythm of the game up. They need to put a clock on that. You can look at it for 30 seconds. If it's in the final play of the game and you want to look at it for 60 seconds, but they got to have a buzzer and you got to make a decision after 30 or 60 seconds, not 5 minutes as they take a look at it. It's killing the game. If they want to look at something, and we understand that they want to get it right, but if I have to look at another play where the ball, I don't know, when you look at it here, they don't know and they don't get it right. Half the time they don't get it right. They can't tell. And then the other half of the time, I think they're just making a call just to make it. I think everybody that watches the NBA, it drives them nuts. They should change that.
I don't mind it because I think what would be even worse than that is if the referees only get 1 or 2 views, if there's 1 or 2 more views that they could look at, if they don't have as much time to look at it because slow motion, they're looking at it it takes 5 times as much time to look at a clip, then they got to make a decision. Meanwhile, ESPN, ABC, TNT doesn't have a time limit. They can keep on showing it. The fans of the team that got screwed is going to say, wait a second, you're telling me that you couldn't have waited an extra 20 to 30 seconds to get the call right? And now we got screwed because we lost the game or whatever the case may be. I get not wanting it to go 5.
I would rather have them do it like you do on the playground. If you can't tell after 30 seconds, have somebody shoot a do or die shot to see where it goes. That's what you do. It's killing the game.
Yeah, I don't think it's killing it. But I'll tell you this. One team that is in trouble right now is the Milwaukee Bucks. I still think they can come back from this 2-0 deficit, but they're in trouble. I've watched these first 2 games, and I still think the Bucks have more talent, but the Heat want it more, and the Bucks look a little bit disinterested. They don't have that same killer instinct that the Bucks have, that the Heat have. And when you look at the 2-star players, certainly Jimmy Butler has more of a killer instinct than Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I think this could be a big choke job, bigger than last year. We're talking about the potential of 2 years in a row, the Milwaukee Bucks having the number 1 seed and failing to make the NBA Finals in a league where seeding matters so much. Obviously, they don't have home court advantage, and so they don't have to worry about going to Game 3 to Miami. But in a league where seeding matters so much, for them to have the number 1 seed last year and not go because the Toronto Raptors beat them, and then this year the possibility of them not even making the Eastern Conference Finals, down 2-0, and the Heat just have to win 2 out of the final 5, that would be a huge choke job by the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'll tell you this, if they can't make it to the NBA Finals, and certainly if they can't make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, we might have to refer to the Milwaukee Bucks as the Milwaukee Bambies.
Well, you might be referring to them as having no more Greek freak, because if there's a lot of pressure on the Bucks to get to the finals, and if they are not able to do that, whether it's his fault or not, people are going to be coming after him and telling him, he's got to get out of there, get out of Dodge. And I think he's going to start listening to people, especially if they go down here to the Heat. I really got to give it up to Jimmy Butler. When he went to Minnesota and created waves, like, you know what, we got a bunch of soft players here, and taking shots at guys in Philadelphia as well. Look, these guys are in the bubble, and then they finally were able to get their family acclimated in there, so they're able to see him, which, some nice stories and things. You see Fred VanVleet's kid running up to him, who didn't like that? Mm-hmm. But then they went to Jimmy Butler, and he's like, I don't want anybody in here in the bubble. We're here for business. I was just like, damn. Jimmy Butler straight up, man. He's just straight up there.
Similar to Damian Lillard.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that. And you can tell, man, he has got that focus. He's got that eye of the tiger, whatever you want to call it, man. He is ready to go. He wants the ball, and he has been awesome in these first 2 games. And they're playing defense, and I know we're going to get to Giannis in a second, but the hole in his game is that jumper. You got to be able to knock down that 3. If you can't, people can, back off on you, build the wall, and that's what they've been doing.
And we'll see if Mexico will pay for it. But who has that attitude on the Milwaukee Bambies? Nobody has that attitude on the Milwaukee Bambies of this is a business trip and things like that. And certainly when you look at Giannis, it doesn't seem like he has that. When you look at Middleton, Lopez, whomever, they don't have that same attitude. And then when you look at the bench players and the supporting cast stepping up, I like the Milwaukee Bucks supporting cast. You look at Hill, you look at Connaughton, Korver, Bledsoe. I know Bledsoe was, I believe, questionable before the game with an injury, but they're getting outplayed by Tyler Hero. He had that huge three-point shot.
Nice.
Yeah. He's a rookie. And he's hitting a big 3-point shot from 3-4 feet behind the arc at the top of the key. Goran Dragic, a veteran, playing big minutes, hitting big shots. Jay Crowder, Bam Adebayo, an all-star. I mean, they've got a good cast, and they seem like they want it. That desire, I think, is the big edge right now.
What about Duncan Robinson?
Duncan Robinson, I thought, played better in the first round. He hasn't been as big of a factor in the second round, but they've got him, and he hasn't been activated yet.
Yeah, I thought you were just slighting the Michigan man. You know what? Hero and Bam Adebayo. And Bam Adebayo looks pretty awesome. It's a guy that you looked at it maybe wasn't going to have a position in the NBA. He's kind of short to be a 5, but, man, he's like a positionless guy that sometimes looks like he can be a shooting guard, man. He hits some big shots.
Or a point guard.
I know. You look at him, awesome pick. And if you look in that draft, I think it went Luke Kennard, Donovan Mitchell, Bam Adebayo. 1, 2, 3. Pistons could attack Adebayo too.
There you go. Well, obviously the star player for the Milwaukee Bucks is Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he deserves to have some criticism if his team with the number 1 seed is struggling right now. They're down 0-2, and people on social media are going to call him out if he continues to struggle like this. And that includes someone like Richard Jefferson, a former, I don't want to say star player, but a former very good player for the New Jersey Nets. And he tweeted this out yesterday. I'll put it up on the screen so everybody can see. It's a gif of Scottie Pippen, and it says, Giannis might be a Pippen. There, I said it. He needs to be a Jordan. And obviously that's because he would say that because Scottie Pippen is known as one of the best role players of all time. He was a star, but he was a role player. He was the Robin to Michael Jordan's Batman. Scottie Pippen saw that tweet and responded with this. I'm not Giannis. I don't have back-to-back league MVPs. He will in a matter of days, and he's not me. The question is, who were you as a player? So a little bit of trash talking, but certainly the gist of what Richard Jefferson is saying is that Giannis has to be better. If he was to win these MVPs, he's got to do what Jordan did, and that's to lead his team to championships, and he can't even get to the NBA Finals. This year he might not get to the third round. What do you think about that comparison?
Well, I think it's more of an indictment of Chris Middleton, that he's got to be that Robin to his Batman. But you know what? It's not like Giannis is the complete, five-tool player here. Guys back off on him, and you look at that three-point shot, and you got to give it to him. And when he's not knocking that down, you just can really slough off him, help him, and he's just doing that gigantic Euro step. And, he is Inspector Gadget and everything, but he's got to be able to knock down that outside shot. And then I thought he did better on the free throw line last night, but in game one, he was a self-check up at the free throw line. Yeah. You got to be able to go knock down 10, 11 free throws if you're up there 13, 14 times. He didn't do that, and you could see that it affected his game. And then you got to be able to knock down that three-point shot. I mean, when they're backing off you 5 feet, you're standing out there, you got that 7-5 reach, you got to be able to knock those three down, and he hasn't been able to do that. But I think that's some fair criticism there. And look, you're going to be the MVP. You're going to be the Defensive Player of the Year. You're going to be the guy that people talk about. If you had, you could pick anybody in the league, this is the guy that you're going to select. People are going to nitpick your game, and you got to be able to put your team on your back, and you got to be able to get to the finals. Regular season doesn't mean anything. And the way that he's played in these first two games, I mean, you can knock him, but you also need to step up if you're Chris Middleton. Jordan didn't win it all until he had Pippen over there. So it might be he just needs an upgrade in his number two guy.
I'm not going to put a whole lot of criticism on Chris Middleton. I know last game he had 20-some-odd points. He was 11 of 12 from the free throw line. I don't think he was great from the three-point line, but you get to the line 12 times, you make 11. That's more than respectable. And I think it is a little bit premature to label Giannis a Pippen or something like that because he's 25 years old. So if 7 years from now when he's 32, he still has never made the NBA Finals and he's still a first-team All-NBA player, then I think it might make sense to call him a Pippen. But this still does – it's not a good look for him to be a two-time MVP, be on a two-time number one seed, and not make the finals in either one of those years. When you're a guy like this, like Giannis, a two-time MVP, you should be able to lift your team up despite what else you have around you. He's got an amazing supporting cast. If you are a number 3 or a 4 seed and you got an MVP, you're being talked about as a guy that can lift your team up and take him to the NBA Finals. Like I believe in the last year of LeBron James' second tenure in Cleveland, his Cavaliers were the 4 seed, but everybody knew that he could lift his team up beyond that 4 seed level to the NBA Finals, and that's what he did. Giannis is not being able to do that. You look at the defense that Miami's putting out there. Not only are they backing off and saying, please jack up a three, but when he does try to drive, they collapse on him with a double team and a triple team every single time, and then he just kind of folds up and then has to figure out who to pass the ball to. It'd be nice if he could make a play, or if Budenholzer could, as a head coach, draw up something so that when they double team, all the great talent around him is moving, getting ready to cut or to move over to the side into the corner for an open three-point shot so that Giannis can be a distributor. Because if that happens, then perhaps there won't be as many double teams and Giannis can do what he does best, and that's cut. But Giannis is not a prime-time player right now in the playoffs, and I don't know if Pippen is the right comparison for him, but lesser than superstar comparisons are going to continue if he cannot lead his team to greatness.
Yeah, and ultimately I want to see him stay there in Milwaukee and get it done. I don't want to see him carpetbag and go to some loaded super team. That would be disappointing, and then he's going to win all these championships like KD. Get it done in Milwaukee. Get it done in Milwaukee, Giannis. Hopefully he does do that.
That's understandable. Let's turn the page now to the fourth chapter.
Yeah, we get to your Penn State Nittany Lions and the rest of the teams in the Big Ten. The Big Ten this is not a joke. This is not some kind of repeat, or this is not something. But the Big Ten may have a revote as early as tomorrow. There's been a number of different outlets that are saying that this could happen as early as tomorrow. A chap, your Penn State Nittany Lions, you had a doctor there putting out a myocarditis tweet about 30 to 35% of the players that were tested that had COVID. They were also found to have myocarditis, which when you read that just in the tweet, you're like, whoa, how are they even thinking about playing football? Yeah. But then the doctor, even in his own tweet there down below, if you read a little bit more, he's like, look, these are some of the initial findings. He wants to have more of a study. But people, especially down south and like anti-COVID people or pro-football fans, I say pro-college football fans that just want to get them out on the field, everybody was attacking the tweet and all of that.
Yeah, it wasn't really, from what I understand, he was speaking to some high school coaches or something like that in Pennsylvania at like a town hall or something like that. And he was talking about some findings that were given to him, but they weren't necessarily his findings. And then by the end of the day, he had to come out and clarify that and say that there was, not really a whole lot of truth to 30 to 35% of people suffering from myocarditis after having contracted the coronavirus, because that would be huge, not just for college football, but for everybody. I mean, that myocarditis increases your risk of heart attack and stroke. And you look at Eduardo Rodriguez of the Boston Red Sox, and he got coronavirus back in March. And in July, the Red Sox said, we're going to shut you down for the year because you have myocarditis. And if you think about teams like the Marlins and the Cardinals, I mean, could a third of all their players and their outbreaks get myocarditis? And all these thousands of millions of people across the country, could they get myocarditis in the next week or two if they got diagnosed a couple of months ago? Luckily, that's not the case. In terms of this revote, look, if I was voting for Penn State, and they said, we're not going to let Sandy Barber or anybody else at Penn State vote. You get to vote, Brian. What are you going to vote for? I would vote no on starting up the season, but I would vote yes on resuming full practice. I don't think they need to guarantee that games are going to be played on October 10th like Dan Patrick was talking about on Tuesday. I don't think they need to guarantee that games are going to be played on the week before Thanksgiving. But they can be in position to play in a month or two if it is possible. And, they can throw out a schedule whenever they want. It's an intra-conference schedule that they're going to have. They don't need to, and they're not going to be any fans at the games, so they don't need to sit there and talk about, we got to have this all rolled out 3 months in advance. I think that if they say, let's start practicing and let's see what happens in the next few weeks, then they could be in position to play if it's safe to do so. They'll be able to see what happens with more students stepping on campus after Labor Day. Are they going to have outbreaks like they've had in Alabama? We can see what's going on with rapid testing. The Pac-12 got a deal done with a rapid testing company. Can the Big Ten get their hands on something like that? They can see what's going on with other leagues as the ACC, Big 12, and SEC starts playing. Are they having issues? Are there folks getting sick and going to the ER and dying? Is there going to be a second wave? Now, that wouldn't happen until it appears mid to late October, but if the Big Ten waits, they can see if that's going to happen. And then, of course, also pressure from the president. That worked in the NFL a few years ago. There was the phone call earlier this week. Is that going to have an effect? We don't know. But I would vote yes on resuming practice, full practice, but no on starting the season ASAP.
Well, if Dr. Mark Schlissel allowed me to vote for Michigan tomorrow, if they really did have this revote, I would change his vote around and I would put a yes. They're already practicing for 12 hours a week right now. I know they only get like 3 to 5 out on the practice field. The rest of it is in the weight room. But they've continued practicing, and at a lot of these schools, they've done a remarkable job still. Look at Michigan had 0 positive tests from the football team in August. So they have still focused in and have done the job, which is incredible, really, when you think about these guys being on campus and yet, staying in a bubble and doing online coursework. But I would get them, and I would I would hang the carrot out there for October 10th. But just as easy as I am voting yes, I would also be ready to, if there's outbreaks and if it doesn't look good, I would be that willing to shut it down. You know, the one thing, this has just all happened in a week. When we were talking at this time last week, we were talking about a winter, January through March schedule. And then last Friday it came out, hey, they're thinking about Thanksgiving. Well, Thanksgiving sounded pretty nice because you could play the games and it wouldn't affect necessarily the 2021 season. That sounded pretty good. But when people started saying, hey, third week in November, what if we just speed it all the way up to October and we can still be involved in the college football playoff? This is all centered from the ADs and the coaches and that rapid testing saying, hey, give us one more shot. We've stayed out here. We've had our nose to the grindstone, and just allow us to try. And I would allow them to try with knowing that they can shut it down at any time. Now, my prediction is that they will not allow them to do that. But that's what I would do.
Yeah, well, and as far as what I predict they won't have a vote tomorrow. I know that there's one of the reports that comes from Bucknuts, obviously, who wants to trust an Ohio State source. But they said that they could vote as soon as tomorrow. That doesn't mean they have to. They could delay the vote until after Labor Day. They could delay the vote until perhaps after. I think the ACC begins play not this weekend, but next weekend.
True.
They could wait to see what a weekend of power conference football looks like and see what their coronavirus test numbers look like before they decide to vote.
Well, they got to start practicing. These 12 hours, they get out there in some shells. But if you're really thinking about October 10th, you need to make a decision over this weekend so they can be on the practice field and start ramping up and get some pads on there. They're going to do this by Monday. Now, what are these guys all doing? At times they make it sound like they're waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, turning on their Zoom, and they're not going to bed at 10 o'clock at night. I don't envision that. Like, can they get all 14 of these presidents and chancellors together, sit them down there and say, hey, let's get a feel for the room. Can we actually get a thumbs up or a thumbs down so we can get you on the record? And then let's just proceed from here. There's a confusing thing about that vote because there was the original one that he said, hey, they just need to have a 60% threshold because it was 12-2 and then 11-3, whatever it was. That was 60%. So now they're talking about flipping it if they can flip 6 of the votes.
The swing votes.
Well, the swing votes and the swing states and everything. But there's also the thought that it's not necessarily if you're getting them to re-vote, you could do that. But are you dismissing the last vote? And so then the threshold is higher. I don't know. People that know the bylaws, they were writing about that today. That seemed pretty confusing. It's already pretty confusing, but I would let you know what, because of all of this just happened, and if I was Kevin Warren, I would disband his Big Ten task force. These guys that are slipping things to Dan Patrick, they're undermining and undercutting the commissioner. You know what I would do this week? I would get in there and say, hey, we're going to have our vote, and whatever it is, we're all going to be behind it. And in all of the interviews, we're going to be behind it. And we're also going to be behind our commissioner, and we're all going to have a unified front.
Or what?
Well, or what? Or it's going to be like it was 3 weeks ago where you cracked open the door, you had your AD over there. I don't even know if there was a vote. I don't know. The president at Minnesota's like, well, it was deliberative. It wasn't really. Like, what are you guys talking about? You guys don't even know. You guys
but what's the incentive for a school to not fall in line? Like if Nebraska says we want to play football and it's 11-3 again, or it's 10-4 against playing football, why do they have to fall in line with the interviews? I mean, are they going to get fined? Are they going to not have their Big Ten network allocation go to them?
Well, you know what? They had their say. They had their vote. This will be the second time around. Because if you don't have a unified front, it's going to be like this, bozo clown show that they've had for the last 3 weeks. Get out there.
True.
If you're Nebraska, you can say, look, we wanted to play. We were suing for the documents. We're doing all these things, but we had another vote. And it's just not going to happen here in the fall. It's a reasonable position that we're taking, safety over, the concerns that we have. And you know what? We didn't like it, but we accept it, and we're not going to sit around crying. We're members of the Big Ten, and we agree to these bylaws, and we're not going to leave the door open. We're not going to undercut our commissioner. We're going to have the back of our commissioner, and we're going to have the back of the rest of our constituents here as well. And so let's move on. If they don't, and they're doing what you're talking about, start crying again, or we're just going to have another month of a bunch of joke stories and leaked out things, and now they're going to.
Well, it would be nice if
now
they
they're
all.
going to have an 8-team playoff that's going to start on Christmas.
Well,
let's go.
It would be nice if they all fell in line. And obviously, if you're a team like Nebraska, you're not going to the CFP anyway. I think that perhaps you would definitely see more crying from the Deep South Buckeyes. But they're not going to sit there and just say, hey, we support the commissioner, especially if they see that during this time, the SEC's playing. Clemson's got a big win against Florida State. There's a big game between Auburn and LSU. And you got Ohio State sitting at home. I don't think that these teams are just going to sit there and say, hey, we just got to respect the vote. They're not going to do that.
All right, let's get to some wager time and story time here. I finally dropped a game, even though I had the right side of the Rockets. They didn't cover the 5.5, but they did win that game, so I lost 25 on that one straight up. So I'm down to 225. Mm-hmm. And I, like you, looked at the nightcap of the NBA game tonight, where it is the Western semifinals between Denver and the LA Clippers. And the Nuggets were getting 9.5, and that seemed too good to me. So I like the Nuggets outright, but I'll gladly take the 9.5, and I put 25 on that one.
Yeah, I'm in lockstep with you. You look at the Nuggets; they last played 2 days ago. They've been playing in all these high-intensity games, and you compare that to the Clippers, and they played some pretty intense games with the Dallas Mavericks, but they've been played since Sunday. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3 days off, and the Clippers weren't playing all that well in that series. The Mavericks didn't have Porzingis for the last few games of that series. Luka Doncic was not at 100% at the end of that series because of an ankle injury, and they still lost the game when Doncic was less than 100% and Porzingis didn't play. So they're not running at all cylinders. I think that the Clippers could lose this game, but they're certainly not going to win by double digits. So, yeah, we're in lockstep on this. Nuggets, whether it's +9, +9.5, take the Nuggets. You want to get to...
Good bet, chap.
Yes. You want to get to some feedback or story time?
No feedback. I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what happened with the live chat, so it's story time.
All right, that takes us to the fifth chapter as we turn the page. And with story time, that's an opportunity for us to give you some insight into what we've been going through in our lives. Of course, I have another ride-sharing story, but first we begin with the man, the Fith, the legend, Dennis Fithian.
This particular room I've been in has been used as a closet, a fitness center, a spare bedroom, a closet for all of our clothes, a junk room. It's been all of those different things. But during the pandemic, it's turned into my office and also a broadcast studio. And since we're a half mile away from the Peach Mountain Observatory, I have named it the Peach Mountain Studio. So that's where we're at right now. I've also had time to rummage through a bunch of different artifacts that I've collected over the years. So
Artifacts?
Things that have been in boxes for years, but I pulled out. And I pulled out three things here. One of these, that game that Barry Sanders, the famous game at the Silverdome where he went over 2,000 yards and they beat the Jets. That. I was in that game. Somehow I was able to sit in a suite for that game, and I grabbed a stack of the programs, and I still have a couple of them. This is Barry Sanders from that game. Do you see the Jets? Does it say Jets on there somewhere? But it's my maybe I should frame it and put it up somewhere. But it's a nice picture of Barry, but it's from the 2,000-yard game. So I brought that up to show you the first one. Another one, I have a box. I wish it was worth money. I don't think it's worth anything. But I collected newspapers back in the day, and I think some mice got into it and all things. But I do have some old newspapers, and here's one of them here. And if you look at this one, it's pretty awesome. It is, do you know who that is?
Somebody from the U.S. Oh, is that Warren Moon?
That is Anthony Carter.
Oh, Anthony Carter. Okay.
Yeah, who that is. And it's still in pretty good shape. I actually put it in the background there for a while, for a couple months. It's a great picture. I should frame that one as well. And today, I was trying to trade away my vast baseball card collection. Every couple of years, I try to trade it, and nobody wants to ever give me anything for it, so I just keep it. So I went through there with the passing of terrific Tom, the greatest Met of all time, and I found one of his baseball cards. So to honor the great Tom Seaver, who just passed away at 75 years old, I think I do have a card somewhere of terrific Tom as a New York Met, but the only one I could find here was from the Reds. And there it is. Terrific Tom Seaver.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to get that autographed.
That's okay.
All right. Well, I was initially a few days ago going to tell a story about this big cokehead and had to do with the strippers in the strip club, but that's not what happened. I decided to go with a different story at about 1 o'clock on Wednesday morning, so a couple hours after the last episode of the fifth chapter. I rolled up to a gas station in Detroit to pick up a woman, and she appeared to be in her 50s. She was smoking a cigarette as she was walking to my car from the bus stop. So whenever I see that, I lower the windows so that when she's exhaling her breath, she can exhale that tobacco straight out the window as opposed to keeping it in my car. But we were going from Detroit to Auburn Hills. And when she got in my car, she mentioned that she had just started a new job at a plant down the street, and it was her first night, so I congratulated her. And she said it wasn't very hard, it was low stress. And then I asked her about the long commute because, I mean, going from Detroit to Auburn Hills, it's not a short commute. For those of you that don't know the Metro Detroit area, that's over a 30-minute drive. And she said it was temporary that she was living up there because she had a lot going on and needed to move up to Pontiac for a bit. Even though we were going to Auburn Hills, the cities are next to each other. But she called it Pontiac. It was actually Auburn Hills. That's not the meat of the story. So she said that she had surgery recently to remove part of her intestines. It was a few months ago. And recovering at home was an issue. She said that she had custody of her grandkids, but her grandkids were always badgering her, asking her to do things, and because she was a good grandmother, and because she said they were spoiled, she would always do whatever they needed to do, or whatever they asked of her. And I thought, well, you know, they toddlers or something like that, obviously you got to take care of them. She said they were in high school. And obviously you think that if they're high schoolers, they would be taking care of their grandmother while she recovers, but that wasn't the case. And then she said, and my daughter just got out of prison. So that's when I knew the story was really going to get interesting. And she said that her daughter, who I guess had moved back into the house with all of them, was not a role model after getting out of prison after 6 years. She was there for drug trafficking. She said that her daughter was constantly running the streets since she got back from prison. I asked if that meant she was getting into drugs and alcohol and sex, and she said, oh, yeah, all that stuff. And
All three of them.
Yeah, all three. And she said that now her grandkids were doing the same thing. And well, I said, you know, they're high schoolers. Perhaps they were already doing that. And she said, no, they used to always be back at the house at 10 o'clock, and now they're staying out late, and they're breaking the law by smoking weed. And I had to explain to her that weed is now legal in Michigan. But she still didn't like that they were getting high, and that's obviously understandable. And she said that they weren't doing that until their mom got home from prison. And she said that the kids are going back to school now, and it's just adding stress to have to get them ready for school. And there's a lot less stress being in Pontiac. And I said, yeah, I understand that it's less stressful. But I told her, look, if you've got custody over your grandkids, then you need to get back to them right away. And she said, why? And I said, because you left your grandchildren with a felon who's getting them into bad habits. And she's like, oh, yeah, I guess so. And then she said she also is a mandated reporter because she has another job as a drug counselor. And she said that she could lose her license if she's caught not reporting. And I said, well, that's another reason to report. And I said, what do you think a judge is going to do when he finds out that you're a mandated reporter and you have abandoned your grandkids and left them with a felon? The judge is going to take your grandkids away and put them in foster care. She said, wow, yeah, you're right. And I said, things could get a lot worse because if you do nothing and the grandkids keep on acting like their mother, your daughter, then your grandson could end up dead. Your daughter won't be able to attend the funeral because she'll be back in prison. And your granddaughter could end up a prostitute. And you don't want to have to live with that. And she said, yeah, you're right about that. And there were things that she had not thought about. And by that time, I just pulled up to her motel, and she directed me to the back of the motel where her room was. And as I parked my car, she said, I had you as a driver for a reason. I believe that, and I know what to do. And then she got out of my car and she went into her room. But I certainly hope that she did the right thing. Obviously, you can understand her wanting to get away from the stress of a family member returning from prison and giving bad habits to her grandkids. But nobody wants to snitch on their child. But if snitching on your child keeps your grandparents or it keeps your grandchildren from following the same path as your errant daughter, that's pretty much what you have to do, right?
Yeah, that's a good. Did she give you a 5-star rating?
I don't know. You can't check to see what an individual rated you. I could check to see if she tipped me, but I can't check to see what she rated me.
Did she tip you?
I don't. She didn't give me a cash tip. I think she might have mentioned she was going to give me a tip in the app, but I didn't check to see specifically if that's what she had done.
Well, hey man, you're doing not only a side job, but also as a pseudo counselor. Nice job.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And hopefully she did too. And hopefully she did the right thing.
Yeah. Hopefully you tell these people when you're driving them, hey, check out the 5th chapter on YouTube.
I have it in my Uber profile.
Yeah. Maybe we should get some business cards made up. There's some Xerox copies. We can hand them out. Hey, here you go. Check it out. Then we'll give you a shout out. We got our first advertising or straight out cash offer tonight on the show. And coming up on Tuesday, will it be play ball for the Big Ten? Will the Tigers still be above 500? We'll have a hell of a lot to talk about. Thanks for watching. For Brian Chapman, I'm Dennis Fithian. Have a great Labor Day weekend.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the 5th chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the 5th chapter.